Marcus Chen crouched behind a fallen crystal tree, his rifle steady in his hands. The purple forest around him was quiet. Too quiet. The other members of his squad were spread out through the strange alien woods, checking for enemy movement. They had been walking for 3 hours without seeing anything dangerous. "This feels wrong," whispered Torres, the youngest member of their team. He was hiding behind a large blue rock, about 20 feet away. "Where are all the bugs?" Marcus knew what Torres meant. The insect-like aliens called Zephyrians usually patrolled this area heavily. Their intelligence reports said there should be enemy scouts everywhere, but the forest was empty and silent. "Stay alert," Marcus said into his radio. "Something is not right here." The crystal trees around them were beautiful but strange. They grew like glass towers, reaching high into the orange sky. The light from the alien sun made them sparkle like diamonds. But Marcus was not here to enjoy the view. He was here to fight a war. The war had started 2 years ago when humans tried to build colonies on this planet. The Zephyrians said it was their territory. Humans said they found it first. Neither side wanted to share. Now, soldiers from both species were dying in these purple forests. Marcus had been fighting aliens for 18 months. He had seen what Zephyrian weapons could do to human bodies. He had lost friends to their plasma guns. The tall insect creatures showed no mercy to humans they captured. A flash of movement caught his eye. Something large was moving between the trees to his left. Marcus turned his rifle toward it, but saw nothing. His heart began to beat faster. "Contact left," he whispered into his radio. Something big moving in the trees. Before anyone could respond, the world exploded in green light. Plasma bolts came from everywhere at once. The crystal trees around Marcus began to crack and break as alien weapons hit them. Hot glass fell like rain. Marcus rolled behind a larger tree and returned fire. His bullets sparked off something hard in the forest. He could hear his squad members shooting and shouting. The Zephyrians had set a perfect trap. "Fall back," Marcus yelled. "Everyone fall back to the landing zone." But it was too late. A plasma bolt hit Torres in the chest, and the young soldier fell without a sound. Johnson screamed as another green beam took off his arm. The aliens were everywhere, firing from positions they had prepared in advance. Marcus tried to run, but a plasma bolt hit the ground near his feet. The explosion threw him into a crystal tree. Sharp glass cut his face and hands. Pain shot through his left shoulder where something had broken. He tried to get up, but more plasma fire kept him pinned down. Through the broken trees, he could see the tall shapes of Zephyrian soldiers moving closer. They looked like giant praying mantises, but with 4 arms instead of 2. Their chitinous armor was dark green and covered in spikes. One of the aliens appeared right in front of him. It was over 8 feet tall, with large compound eyes that reflected the light like black mirrors. 4 arms held different weapons, all pointed at Marcus. The creature made a series of clicking sounds that might have been laughter. Marcus raised his rifle, but another alien hit it with a weapon that looked like a staff. Electric pain shot up his arms, and he dropped the gun. 2 more Zephyrians grabbed him with their sharp, clawed hands. The leader of the alien squad examined Marcus like he was looking at an interesting bug. The creature tilted its triangular head and made more clicking noises. Marcus tried to break free, but the aliens holding him were too strong. They dragged him through the forest to a clearing where a large alien ship waited. The ship looked like a giant metal insect, with wings that folded against its sides. Other Zephyrian soldiers were loading equipment and checking the area. Marcus was thrown into a small metal cage inside the ship. The cage was too small for him to stand up straight, and the metal was cold against his injured shoulder. Through the bars, he watched the aliens preparing to leave. The ship lifted off with a sound like buzzing wings. Through a small window, Marcus could see the purple forest getting smaller below them. Soon, they were flying through the orange clouds toward space. Marcus had heard stories about what happened to humans the Zephyrians captured. Most of the time, they just killed them right away. Sometimes they kept them alive for a few days to ask questions, then killed them anyway. No human prisoner had ever escaped from a Zephyrian ship. He looked down at his hands. They were cut and bleeding from the crystal glass. His shoulder hurt every time he moved. But he was alive, which was more than he had expected. The ship flew for several hours before it docked with something much larger. Marcus felt the vibration as the smaller ship connected to what must be a huge alien warship. Soon, Zephyrian soldiers came to get him from his cage. They dragged him through long metal corridors filled with strange alien equipment. Other Zephyrians stopped what they were doing to stare at him. Some made clicking sounds that might have been insults or threats. Finally, they brought him to a large room with a high ceiling. At the far end, sitting on something that looked like a metal throne, was the biggest Zephyrian Marcus had ever seen. This one had scars across its chitinous armor and wore what looked like medals or rank symbols. The alien leader studied Marcus with its large black eyes. When it spoke, its voice was like grinding metal mixed with cricket sounds. But somehow, Marcus could understand the words. "So," the alien general said, "this is what a human looks like up close. Smaller than I expected. Weaker too." Marcus tried to stand straight despite his injuries. He would not show fear to these creatures, even if he was going to die. General Thektar walked in a circle around Marcus, examining him like a scientist studying a new specimen. The alien's four arms moved independently as he gestured, two holding weapons while the other two pointed at different parts of Marcus's body. "Your species fascinates me, human," Thektar said in his grinding voice. "You are so small, so soft, yet you fight like cornered animals. Why do you not surrender when you know you cannot win?" Marcus said nothing. His military training had taught him to give only name, rank, and serial number. But the alien general did not seem interested in military secrets. "I have been fighting your kind for 2 years," Thektar continued. "I have destroyed 17 of your colonies. I have killed thousands of your soldiers. Yet still, you come back for more. It makes no sense." The general stopped in front of Marcus and leaned down until their faces were only inches apart. Marcus could smell something like metal and electricity coming from the alien's breathing holes. "Perhaps you are too stupid to understand when you are beaten," Thektar said. "Or perhaps you simply enjoy dying." Marcus met the alien's compound eyes without flinching. "We fight because this planet is ours by right of discovery. You're the invaders here." Thektar made a sound that might have been laughter. "Rights? Discovery? Child, my people have been traveling between stars since before your species learned to make fire. This sector belongs to the Zephyrian Empire. It has always belonged to us." "Then why wasn't anyone here when we arrived?" Marcus asked. The question seemed to anger the general. He raised one of his weapons and pointed it at Marcus's head. For a moment, Marcus thought he was about to die. But then, Thektar lowered the weapon. "Take him to detention level 7, the general told his guards. "Tomorrow he dies. Publicly. Let the crew see what happens to human invaders." The guards dragged Marcus away through more corridors. The detention level was deep in the ship's belly, where the air was thick and smelled like machine oil. They threw him into a small cell with metal walls and a single light in the ceiling. Marcus sat on the hard floor and examined his injuries. His shoulder was definitely broken or dislocated. The cuts on his face had stopped bleeding, but they still hurt. He was hungry and thirsty, but no one brought him food or water. Hours passed. Marcus tried to sleep, but the pain in his shoulder made it difficult. He could hear strange sounds through the walls. Alien voices. Machinery humming. Things he did not recognize. Then, suddenly, loud alarms began ringing throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the corridors outside his cell. Marcus could hear Zephyrian voices shouting in their clicking language. Something was wrong on the ship. Something that had the aliens very worried. Through his cell door, Marcus watched alien soldiers running back and forth. They moved with quick, panicked movements that reminded him of disturbed insects. Whatever was happening, it was serious. The alarms got louder. A voice speaking in the alien language echoed through the ship's communication system. Marcus could not understand the words, but the tone was urgent, almost desperate. Then he heard something that made his blood run cold. The sound of a child crying. It was not a human child. The crying had a different quality to it, more like a series of high-pitched clicking noises. But Marcus recognized the sound of fear and pain in any language. Somewhere on this ship, a young alien was in trouble. More Zephyrian soldiers ran past his cell. These ones carried emergency equipment. Tanks of something that might be oxygen, medical devices, cutting tools. They were heading toward the source of the crying sounds. Marcus pressed his ear against the cell door. Through the metal, he could hear more sounds. Adult aliens calling out. Machinery failing. Something that sounded like gas escaping from broken pipes. The child's crying got weaker. A group of Zephyrian rescue workers came back down the corridor. They were covered in some kind of yellow powder and moved like they were having trouble breathing. One of them collapsed and had to be carried by the others. Marcus began to understand what was happening. Some kind of toxic gas leak. The rescue teams could not get to whoever was trapped because the environment was too dangerous, even for them. But Marcus had grown up on Earth. Humans had evolved on a planet with volcanoes, poisonous plants, and dangerous animals. Their bodies were tough in ways that aliens from safer worlds might not be. Marcus started banging on his cell door. "Hey!" he shouted. "Someone get over here. I can help." The aliens running past ignored him. They probably thought he was just trying to escape or cause trouble. Marcus banged louder. "Your rescue teams can't get through the gas. I might be able to. Humans are resistant to toxins." Still no response. The alien child's crying was getting fainter. Time was running out. "General Thektar," Marcus yelled as loud as he could. "Get General Thektar down here. I know how to save whoever is trapped." Finally, one of the alien soldiers stopped and looked at him. The creature tilted its head and made clicking sounds into a communication device. A few minutes later, more soldiers arrived, including one with officer markings. The officer spoke to Marcus in broken human language. "You. Make noise." "Gas leak, right?" Marcus said quickly. "Someone trapped in toxic environment? Your people can't get to them?" The officer's compound eyes focused on Marcus with what might have been surprise. "How you know this?" "Because I can hear everything through these walls," Marcus said. "And I can help. Human biology is different from yours. We might be able to survive in that environment long enough to reach whoever is trapped." The officer made more clicking sounds into his communication device. Then he waited. 5 minutes later, General Thektar himself came running down the corridor. The big alien's usually perfect armor was streaked with the same yellow powder Marcus had seen on the rescue workers. When he reached Marcus's cell, his compound eyes showed something Marcus had not seen before. Fear. "What do you want, human?" Thektar demanded. Marcus took a deep breath. He was about to offer to help save the life of an alien child, even though these same aliens were planning to kill him tomorrow. But that crying sound was getting weaker, and time was running out. Marcus looked directly into General Thektar's compound eyes. "Your child is trapped in there, isn't it?" The alien general's whole body went rigid. For a moment, Marcus thought Thektar might kill him right there. But then the general spoke, in a voice barely above a whisper. "How did you know?" "The way you're acting," Marcus said. "No military commander gets this scared, unless it's personal. And I can hear a young one crying, getting weaker every minute." Thektar's 4 hands clenched into fists. The environmental systems failed in the education section. Toxic gas is flooding 3 levels. The emergency doors sealed automatically. My offspring Zekhai is trapped with 6 other younglings. Your rescue teams can't get through? The gas burns our breathing systems, Thektar said. Even with protective equipment, we cannot survive long enough to reach them. The ventilation shafts are too small for adult Zephyrians to crawl through. Marcus nodded. But they're not too small for humans. And human lungs might handle that gas better than yours. We evolved on a world with poisonous air from volcanoes and chemical reactions. Our bodies filter out toxins that would kill other species. The general stared at him for a long moment. You are suggesting that I trust my child's life to a human prisoner? To someone I was planning to execute tomorrow? I'm not asking you to trust me, Marcus said. I'm telling you, I might be the only chance those kids have. Your people can't reach them. I might be able to. Thektar turned away and spoke rapidly in his own language to the other officers. They made agitated clicking sounds back at him. Marcus could tell they thought this was a terrible idea. Through the argument, the sound of crying got fainter. Whatever gas was in those chambers was slowly killing the trapped younglings. General, Marcus said urgently, every second we waste talking is a second closer to losing them. If you're going to do this, decide now. Thektar spun around to face him. If this is some human trick. What trick? Marcus interrupted. You're still holding all the weapons. You can kill me anytime you want. But right now, I'm the only one who might be able to save your kid. The general studied Marcus for another few seconds. Then he barked orders to his soldiers. They opened the cell door and grabbed Marcus by the arms. They rushed him through the ship to the emergency area. The corridors here were filled with yellow gas that burned Marcus's eyes and nose. But he could breathe, even if it was uncomfortable. The Zephyrian soldiers with him were wearing breathing masks and moved like they were in serious pain. There, Thektar said, pointing to a ventilation grate in the wall. The shaft leads to the education section. The younglings are trapped in classroom 7, about 200 meters through the ductwork. Marcus examined the grate. It was just barely big enough for him to fit through, especially with his injured shoulder. A Zephyrian adult would never make it. I need something to breathe through, Marcus said. The gas might be thicker in the enclosed spaces. None. I'm Sci. Nunder non. They gave him a small breathing device designed for Zephyrian biology. It did not fit his face properly, but it was better than nothing. They also gave him a flashlight and a simple communication device. How will I know which younglings are yours? Marcus asked. Thektar hesitated. Then he pulled out a small device that projected a holographic image. It showed a young Zephyrian, smaller than the adults, but with the same basic, insect-like features. The young alien had bright green markings on its chitinous armor. Zekhai has green identification marks, Thektar said. But please, save them all, if you can. Jenga, Zekhai. Marcus nodded and crawled into the ventilation shaft. The space was cramped and filled with the yellow gas. His shoulder screamed with pain every time he had to squeeze through a tight spot. The gas burned his throat and made his eyes water. But he kept moving. Behind him, he could hear Thektar's voice through the communication device. Can you hear me, human? I can hear you, Marcus gasped, still moving toward the classroom. The shaft branched in several directions. Marcus had to guess which way led to the trapped younglings. He followed the sound of crying, which was getting clearer as he got closer. After what felt like hours but was probably only 10 minutes, Marcus reached another grate. Through it, he could see a large room filled with thick yellow gas. Several small shapes were huddled in one corner, the young Zephyrians. Marcus kicked the grate open and dropped into the room. The gas was much thicker here, and even with the breathing device, he was starting to feel dizzy. He had to work fast. 6 young aliens looked up at him in terror. They had never seen a human before, and to them, he probably looked like a monster. They made high-pitched clicking sounds and tried to back away. "It's okay," Marcus said softly, even though he knew they could not understand him. He held up his hands to show he was not carrying weapons. One of the younglings was smaller than the others and had bright green markings. HFY. The general's child was barely conscious and having trouble breathing. Marcus spoke into his communication device. "I found them. 6 younglings, all alive, but some are in bad shape. The gas is really thick in here. Can you get them out?" Thektar's voice was desperate. Marcus looked at the ventilation shaft he had just crawled through. It was too small for him to carry even one of the young aliens, but there might be another way. He examined the room more carefully. On the far wall, he found an emergency exit that was sealed shut. The door was too heavy for the younglings to open by themselves, but Marcus might be able to break it open. He found a piece of equipment that was heavy enough to use as a battering ram. His shoulder was on fire with pain, but he ignored it and started hitting the emergency door. On the 3rd hit, the door cracked. On the 5th, it broke open. Cool air rushed into the room from the corridor beyond. The emergency exit led to a section of the ship that was not affected by the gas leak. Marcus turned to the terrified younglings. "Come on," he said gently, making beckoning motions with his hands. "This way. You're going to be okay." The young aliens looked at him with their large compound eyes. They were scared, but they were also smart enough to understand that he was trying to help them. One by one, they followed him through the broken emergency door into the clean air beyond. Marcus stumbled into the corridor with the 6 young Zephyrians close behind him. His lungs were burning from the toxic gas, and his vision was starting to blur. The broken shoulder made every movement painful. But he had to make sure all the younglings were safe. HFY, the general's child, was the smallest and weakest of the group. The little alien could barely walk and made soft clicking sounds of distress. Marcus picked up the young Zephyrian carefully, surprised by how light the creature was despite its chitinous armor. Alarms were still ringing throughout the ship as Marcus carried HFY and led the other younglings toward the main corridors. Adult Zephyrian crew members appeared around a corner, rushing toward them. When they saw the rescued children, they made excited clicking sounds and hurried forward to help. General Thektar arrived moments later, running faster than Marcus had thought possible for such a large creature. When the general saw his child safe in Marcus's arms, he stopped suddenly and stared. "HFY," Thektar whispered, taking his offspring gently from Marcus. The young alien looked up at its parent with large, tired eyes and made weak clicking sounds. Marcus swayed on his feet. The gas poisoning was getting worse, and his body was finally giving out after the rescue mission. The corridor started spinning around him. "The human needs medical attention," someone said in the Zephyrian language. Marcus understood just enough to know they were talking about him. "Get him to the medical bay," Thektar ordered. "Use the human physiology protocols. Save him." Marcus felt alien hands catching him as he collapsed. The last thing he remembered was being carried through the corridors of the ship while Zephyrian medical personnel spoke urgently about treating human biology. When Marcus woke up, he was lying on a medical bed that was too big for him. Strange alien equipment surrounded him, beeping and humming with unknown purposes. His shoulder had been properly set and was wrapped in some kind of healing device. The cuts on his face were covered with a clear substance that made the pain disappear. A Zephyrian medical officer was standing nearby, checking readings on various devices. When it noticed Marcus was awake, the creature made clicking sounds and spoke into a communication device. General Thektar arrived within minutes. The large alien approached Marcus's bed slowly, as if he was unsure about something. "How do you feel, human?" "Like I got hit by a transport ship," Marcus said honestly. His voice was rough from the gas exposure. "But I'll live." "How are the kids?" "All 6 younglings have recovered completely," Thektar said. "You saved their lives." Marcus nodded and tried to sit up. The healing device on his shoulder made movement easier than expected. Good. That's what matters. Thektar was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, less commanding, more thoughtful. Why did you do it? The general asked. Do what? Risk your life for Zephyrian children. You knew I was planning to execute you. You could have let them die and claimed revenge against your enemies. Arno. Marcus looked at the alien general with surprise. They were just kids. What kind of person lets children die when they can help? The kind of person I was told humans are. Thektar said quietly. Cruel. Selfish. Caring only for your own species. Maybe some humans are like that, Marcus admitted. But not all of us. Just like, probably not all Zephyrians are the same either. Over the next few days, Marcus was visited regularly by medical staff and guards. But he was also visited by someone else. HFY, General Thektar's child. The young Zephyrian was curious about the strange alien who had saved its life. Despite the language barrier, HFY brought Marcus small gifts. Drawings made with strange alien tools, crystals from the ship's geology lab, and food items that were safe for human consumption. Marcus found himself looking forward to these visits. HFY was intelligent and playful. Not so different from human children Marcus had known. The young alien was fascinated by Marcus's hair, which apparently was very different from Zephyrian biology. It would sit near his medical bed and make soft clicking sounds that seemed like questions. Through simple gestures and patience, Marcus began teaching HFY basic human words. In return, the young alien taught him some Zephyrian concepts. They could not have complex conversations, but they developed a friendship that needed no words. General Thektar often watched these interactions from the doorway. Marcus could tell the alien general was thinking deeply about something. Sometimes Thektar would enter the medical bay and ask Marcus questions about human culture, human beliefs, human families. On your world, Thektar asked one day, do parents teach their offspring to hate other species? Some do, Marcus said honestly. But most try to teach their kids to judge others by their actions, not by what they look like or where they come from. HFY asks me why the funny alien, that is what it calls you, saved its life when humans and Zephyrians are enemies. What do you tell it? Thektar was quiet for a long time. I do not know what to tell it. This situation was not covered in any of my military training. During his recovery, Marcus learned more about the Zephyrian ship and its crew. The medical staff treated him with professional care, but he could tell they were confused by his presence. They had been taught that humans were monsters. Yet here was one who had risked his life to save their children. Word of Marcus's rescue mission had spread throughout the ship. Some crew members viewed it with suspicion, convinced it was part of some elaborate human trick. Others were beginning to question what they had been told about human nature. The ship's military officers were particularly troubled. Several times, Marcus overheard arguments in the corridors. Some aliens demanding his immediate execution. Others suggesting that maybe they needed to reconsider their understanding of humans. General Thektar was caught in the middle of this growing controversy. Marcus could see the stress in the alien's movements and hear it in his voice. The general was facing pressure from his superiors to proceed with the planned execution, but he was also dealing with the knowledge that this particular human had saved his child's life. One evening, Thektar came to the medical bay alone. He dismissed the guards and medical staff, leaving just himself and Marcus in the room. I have received new orders, the general said. Marcus felt his stomach drop. He had known this moment would come eventually. Tomorrow, you are to be transferred to the Central Command ship for immediate execution. The High Command believes your presence on this vessel is affecting crew morale in unacceptable ways. I understand, Marcus said quietly. Do you? Thektar asked. Do you understand that I cannot allow the human who saved my child to be executed? Marcus looked up at the alien general in surprise. What are you saying? I am saying that tomorrow's prisoner transfer is going to encounter unexpected difficulties. The next morning, Marcus was escorted through the ship's corridors toward the transport bay. His hands were secured with alien restraints, and 4 guards surrounded him. To anyone watching, it looked like a routine prisoner transfer. General Thektar was not there to see him off, which Marcus understood. The alien general could not be directly involved in what was about to happen. But as they walked through the ship, Marcus noticed that the corridors they were taking were different from the route he had expected. Instead of heading toward the main transport bay, they were moving toward a smaller launch area used for scout ships. The guard captain was a Zephyrian named Velkar, who had been present during the rescue of the younglings. As they walked, Velkar spoke quietly to Marcus in broken human language. General says you save little ones. General says we have debt. Marcus nodded but said nothing. He could not afford to say anything that might get Thektar in trouble with his superiors. They reached a small hangar where a single-person scout ship was waiting. The ship was tiny compared to the massive Zephyrian warships, but it was fast and had enough supplies for several days of travel. Velkar began removing Marcus's restraints. Ship has navigation to neutral space. Human colonies there. You go. You safe. What about the transfer? Marcus asked. Won't your command know something went wrong? Transfer ship have accident, Velkar said, with what might have been a smile. Engine malfunction. Prisoner, lost in space. Very sad. Marcus understood. They were faking his death. As far as official records would show, he had been killed while trying to escape during the prisoner transfer. Before Marcus could board the scout ship, he heard familiar clicking sounds behind him. He turned to see young Zekhai running into the hangar, followed closely by General Thektar. The general looked unhappy about his child being there, but Zekhai had apparently insisted on saying goodbye. The young alien approached Marcus and held out something small and crystalline. Friendship crystal, Thektar explained. In our culture, it represents eternal gratitude and bond between individuals. Zekhai wants you to have it. Marcus knelt down and accepted the crystal from the young alien. It was warm to the touch and seemed to glow with its own inner light. Zekhai made soft clicking sounds and touched Marcus's hand gently with its own chitinous fingers. Thank you, Marcus said to the youngster. Even though Zekhai could not understand the words, the meaning was clear. General Thektar approached Marcus as well. The big alien looked uncomfortable, like he was struggling with conflicting emotions. This does not mean our species are at peace, Thektar said quietly. I am still a Zephyrian general. You are still a human soldier. The war continues. Thanks for watching. End quote. I understand, Marcus replied. But, Thektar continued, I will remember what you did here. And perhaps there are others, like you, among your people. Others, like me, among mine. I think there are, Marcus said, on both sides. Thektar was silent for a moment. Then he spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. If someday our leaders decide to talk instead of fight, I would be willing to listen. Marcus nodded. So would I. The general stepped back and gestured toward the scout ship. Go now, before someone notices what we are doing. The ship has food and water for your biology. The navigation system will take you to human space. Marcus climbed into the small ship. The controls were labeled in Zephyrian script, but the navigation system had been set to automatic. All he had to do was start the engines and let the ship fly itself to safety. As the hangar doors opened and the scout ship lifted off, Marcus looked back through the viewport. General Thektar and his child were watching him leave. The general raised one of his 4 arms in what might have been a salute. The flight to neutral space took 6 hours. When Marcus finally reached the human outpost on Kepler Station, he was debriefed by military intelligence officers who could barely believe his story. You're telling us that a Zephyrian general let you escape? Commander Harrison asked for the 3rd time. After you saved his kid? That's right, Marcus said. He had left out some details about how exactly the escape had been arranged, not wanting to get Thektar in trouble if this information somehow made it back to Zephyrian Command. And this general said he might be willing to talk peace? Marcus held up the friendship crystal that Zekhai had given him. He said, if our leaders ever decided to talk, instead of fight, he would be willing to listen. Commander Harrison studied the crystal with interest. This could be important, Chen. Very important. We've been looking for any opening to start diplomatic contact with the Zephyrians. Over the following weeks, Marcus's report made its way up through human military command to the civilian government. The idea of peace talks with the Zephyrians was discussed at the highest levels. Some officials were skeptical. They argued that one general's change of heart did not represent the entire Zephyrian Empire. Others worried it was an elaborate trap. But others pointed out that the war was costing both species enormous resources and lives. If there was even a chance for peace, it had to be explored. 3 months after Marcus's escape, human diplomatic representatives made an unprecedented announcement. They were requesting formal peace negotiations with the Zephyrian Empire. The Zephyrians' response came as a complete surprise to everyone except Marcus. The alien empire agreed to talks, and they announced that their chief negotiator would be General Thektar, recently promoted to the rank of Supreme War Leader. The peace talks were held on a neutral space station in the border region between human and Zephyrian territory. Marcus was invited to attend as a special advisor. Given his unique experience with Zephyrian culture, when the Zephyrian delegation arrived, General Thektar was the first to emerge from their transport ship. He looked the same as Marcus remembered, tall, imposing, covered in chitinous armor that bore the scars of many battles. But there was something different about the general now. Something in the way he moved, the way he carried himself. The certainty and arrogance Marcus had seen during his interrogation were gone, replaced by something that looked almost like hope. The first formal meeting between human and Zephyrian representatives began with a simple ceremony. General Thektar approached the negotiating table and placed something on its surface, a small, glowing crystal identical to the one Zekhai had given Marcus. Before we discuss terms of peace, Thektar said through a translation device, I want to acknowledge the human who showed us that our species have more in common than we realized. Marcus stepped forward and placed his own friendship crystal next to Thektar's. The two crystals seemed to glow brighter when they were together. Sometimes, Marcus said, it takes saving a child to remember that we're all just people trying to protect the ones we love. General Thektar nodded slowly. Then let us talk about building a future where no more children need to be saved from wars between our peoples. The negotiations would take months. There would be setbacks and disagreements and moments when it seemed like the talks might fail completely. But they had started with 2 crystals on a table and the memory of a human soldier who had risked everything to save an alien child. And sometimes, that was enough.